Clone Facility, Chapter 1. A door cracked open silently. A face almost as white as the fedora above it peeked out. The face whipped left and right, furtively glancing up and down a grey hallway. He slipped out and silently closed the door behind him, the bolt automatically locking into place with a click. As he looked up and down the hallway again, hand brushing lightly against the cool metal wall before he took off, the ends of the lab coat he had just thrown over his savvy suit flapping behind him as he otherwise silently jogged down the hall before coming to the nearest door. Like the one before, it was reinforced steel, however this was a blaster door. A security panel system was set into the wall next to it with a glowing blue screen. Detective Clover grabbed the newly acquired ID card that was attached to his lab coat and pressed it against the screen. A light generated from behind the screen scanned the card with a slight buzz, and the locks on the door unclasped. This door splitting in two with the top half sliding up and the bottom half sliding down. Grinning, he cautiously stepped into the room. The thing he was immediately confronted with, the thing his eyes were automatically fixated on, was a giant glass vat. It had a metal base with wires, but what was important was the man floating in blue liquid. His muscular physique was highlighted by lights which seemed to shine up from below him, originating from somewhere within the metal base of the vat, which was covered with wires. His eyes were closed as if he were sleeping, and a clear mask connected to a tube which Clover could follow up to the top of the vat, where it became lost among many other tubes and wires which rose up, connecting with something above. Ripping his eyes away, he looked to the left, where there was another tube, separated from the first by a few meters, then past that to another and another, each spaced a few meters apart. Looking to the right, it was the same. Looking forward, it was also the same, rows upon rows of these cloning vats, stretching on through the dark into the distance. Looking up again, Clover could see a second level with the same vats directly above the ones below. The second level was a series of walkways made of metal grating and railings connecting the vats to each other. As he walked down the aisle, eyes wide, he could see that each face looked identical, the hair the exact same blonde, thankfully wearing the same black shorts. They even looked the exact same height, perhaps 6.2 inches, the detective estimated. "What is this?" he murmured to himself. The murmur was louder than it should have been. Upon noticing this, he realized that, whilst he was treading lightly in his scuffed sneakers, his normal near-silent steps were being amplified by this cavernous space. He continued to walk onward, noticing another vat ahead. As he got closer, the vat became larger, much larger, and he could see that the figure it contained was huge. The vat had no grating above, however. It was closed off at the top like the others. The cords connected to the roof. As he approached, Detective Clover could see that there were steps leading up to it with a large computer board around the front. Inside, a hulking beast of a clone floated. It must have been over twice the height of the others, its roided out muscles bulging. "Oi! Who is that?" a rough voice yelled from above. He looked up and saw two guards with guns. Detective Clover backed up. Seeing a guard raise his gun, he bolted, the sounds of bullets raining down around him. He ducked behind a tube and kept running, hearing the sound of high-velocity metal hitting glass. "Stop, you idiot! The clones!" Clover heard the amplified voice of the second guard. The detective kept racing back to the door in a roundabout direction, dodging this way and that around vats to confuse his pursuers. He glanced behind, catching a brief glimpse of a body slumped on the ground, blue liquid oozing around it. He found the door, which had evidently closed behind him without his realizing, pressed the card to the screen next to it, and raced through. Suddenly alarms went off. The lights went out, plunging the hallway into darkness. before bathing it in red light. He started in one direction but saw a door further along open and guards pour out. He turned and fled down the hallway, noticing a bend and ducking behind it. He ran a few paces to a closed double door with a green glowing exit sign above it. He tried pushing and pulling on the handle, but the doors would not budge. There was no security panel to place his stolen ID and no lock to pick. Stuck, he tensed up, hearing gunshots and human screams. Coming to a decision, he hurried back to the bend and slowly snuck a look. A muscular, shirtless man bathed in the crimson red light was tearing through the guards. He backhanded one in the chest, sending him into a wall. As that guard crumpled to the ground, the man grabbed another guard's arm and tore it off, blood spurting into the air. He punched another in the chest so hard he went flying towards Clover. Clover jumped back into his little alcove and stared wildly as the guard flew past him. Clover remained frozen in place for some time, ears pricked. He backed up, heart thumping, as the clone slowly entered his field of vision from behind the corner. Its eyes bored into him, blank, devoid of emotion. He slowly raised his hands, pressing up against one of the walls. "I'm not one of them," he said. The clone lumbered towards him, its terrifyingly blank eyes never faltering. "Those guys are after me too." The detective glanced towards the locked exit. "If you want freedom, it's behind that door." It stopped before him. He felt like he wanted to rip his own skin, being stared at by those black soulless eyes. "Freedom?" Its deep voice and had a raspiness of non-use, the eyebrows frowning slightly, but the soulless eyes unchanging as it felt around the word. "Yes," he pointed. "Freedom. That door." The clone remained creepily still for a moment. Clover assumed it was considering his statements, although nothing further about his expression seemed to indicate that. The clone jerked forward suddenly, causing Clover to literally jump into the air and his heart to beat rapidly against his chest again, but the clone walked right past him. It punched one of the doors, which sent it flying, the others swinging on one hinge. With a sense of foreboding, the detective reluctantly followed it. They found themselves in the middle of a flight of stairs, seeming to continue infinitely down and infinitely up. The red lights and sirens were going off here too. It looked at him with those soulless eyes. "This way. Freedom is this way." The detective, having come through this way recently, started down the steps. Twisting to look behind, he encouraged the clone with a nod, and it followed him. They ran down and down the steep stairs. Clover could hear the clone's heavy footsteps keeping pace from behind, which was as unnerving to think about as its lack of heavy breathing. He dared not look back again. They heard guards above them yelling, swarming out of the doorway they had broken through. The guards were firing bullets which whizzed past whilst they chased after them. A door opened in front of them, and guards came rushing out, the one in front pointing an AK at him, which he kicked to the side, the gun going off wildly. His momentum hurtled him forward, which he used to elbow the guard in the face. A strong hand gripped his shoulder, pulling him backward as the clone came forward. The detective's back crashed into the stairs, causing a sharp pain. The clone punched one guard in the chest, which sent him back into 4 others behind him, knocking them all over. The clone then turned and scooped the detective up in both arms. Bullets bounced off its back. With a snarl, it jumped over the railing and down the stairway. The detective's eyes widened and his pulse went through the roof. They landed heavily, multiple stories below, its shoulder smashing into a wall. It jumped down another few stories, landing more firmly this time, then again and again before finally landing solidly on the ground floor, cracking the concrete. The detective stumbled out of the clone's arms, distancing himself while straightening his clothes awkwardly. He glanced around. "Come on, this way," he beckoned, and they raced through rooms and down corridors, the detective deliberately taking them through less populated areas to the back entrance. They ran into a large loading bay area filled with trucks that had Amazon logos on the side. They ran between these trucks to the only partially open roller door. The detective pressed one of the buttons on the wall, and they both ran out into the night. The roller door closed behind them with a clank. The detective ran to a car, pulled out a key he had stolen yesterday, and fit it into the door lock, got in and started the engine. He raised his eyes to the rearview mirror and caught sight of the clone. It was staring up into the night sky. "Just leave. It has nothing to do with you. That clone is not your responsibility." He revved the engine. "It probably saved your life. What will happen to it on its own?" He sighed and got out of the car. He tentatively walked towards it. It was staring up at the glowing white orb in the dark sky, an orb surrounded by a vast, inky black darkness, penetrated by small dots of white light. Beautiful. It slowly raised and lowered its chest, breathing deeply in and out, feeling the cold air on its skin. "G'day, mate." His breath turned into mist in the cold air. "Freedom?" The clone continued to stare into the night sky. Yes, it is. Listen, those bad guys with guns who are chasing us, they'll still be looking. We need to get out of here." The clone suddenly jerked around to face him directly, body stopping solidly. "Those bad guys? You good guy?" Its blank eyes bored into his. Taken aback, he swallowed dryly. His leg twitches backwards but remains in place. Yeah, I'm the good guy." He glanced towards the building, hearing a commotion. "Look, we need to go. Now." The clone started forward, slowly lumbering over to the car, and the detective hurriedly followed suit to the driver's side, hopping in. The clone opened the passenger door and got in, sitting solidly and staring blankly forward. He glanced at the clone, who continued to stare forward, body hardly seeming to move. He put a hand on the stick shift and drove off.